Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host for the show. Before we bring on tonight's guest, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, please go to bigfooteyewitness.com and submit a report. All right, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Bernadette. Bernadette, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time. Bernadette, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay, my name is Bernadette. I'm 51 years old. I have 4 sons, 9 grandchildren. I'm a born-again Christian, and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on the west side Mesa. That being said, I'm no stranger to the paranormal and the strange, growing up in New Mexico with Roswell and Dulce Base. So I'm definitely no stranger to the paranormal.
You said that you're into paranormal things. Were you into horror movies before you had your encounter? And if you were, what kind of an effect did your encounter have on your interest in watching them?
Not really so much as horror movies, but more just like spiritual realm, ghosts, cryptids, stuff like that. And it's kind of been before. It was actually before this incident and a lot more after.
So after you had your encounters, you pretty much caught the bug then as far as cryptids go.
Oh, yes. I was researching so much stuff after that.
Well, that's pretty common when people have a Sasquatch sighting or even a Dogman sighting. That's normally what does happen, so yeah, that doesn't surprise me. How did you find out about the show?
Well, after I had my first encounter, I wasn't sure what I saw, so I just started researching dogs with humps, hyenas in New Mexico, Brahma bulls, all kinds of stuff, trying to see what I saw that night. And that's when I came across Dogman Encounters. I'd never even heard of a Dogman till after that encounter. And then as I started listening to your shows and looking up pictures and stuff, I realized that I had seen one.
Well, I'm glad you found out about me. How long did you wait to contact me, though, after you did find out about what I do?
Well, my first encounter was in September of 2016. So 3 years that I finally decided to contact you.
Wow, 3 years. Why'd you wait so long?
Well, the first encounter was just a sighting. So, that just kind of just piqued my interest in it. And I just started researching, listening, and was kind of caught up in that scene for a bit. And then it wasn't until I actually had my second experience in September of 2018 that it really rattled me. And that's when I was encouraged to contact you.
Who encouraged you to contact me?
It was my fiance. Yeah, he said I should tell my story. And I felt I should tell it too, just because, I have children and grandchildren, and I want them to know that these kind of things do exist. It's real. It's a strange world we live in. So I wanted them to have something to look back on, because sometimes stories get lost through time. I've told my kids, I've told the grandkids, but sometimes those stories get lost over time. So this would be almost like a permanent record, hopefully it shows around for a long, long time. And when my grandkids are big, they can look up and say, hey, yeah, my grandma talked about that and it's real. And, just kind of like that.
Ah, I see. From what I understand, your fiancé is a minister. How much help has he been in your efforts to deal with your encounters?
Oh, he's been tremendous help. His name is Miguel Jimenez. He's at Shield of the Sun on YouTube. And so he has really, really helped me. He's, brought a lot of things to light for me. Reassured me, that, because I'm a Christian, he's a Christian, and we're believers, and God is always with us and takes care of us. And to kind of realize what these things are, it's given me a better idea and understanding of wrapping my head around of what these dogmen are. I believe they're Nephilim. I believe they're a demon in a physical body. Could be through a science experiment, could be through just fallen angels, mating with different things, as Genesis 6. So it's just given me a little bit more insight into the spiritual realm as well as it crossing over into our physical realm.
Your fiance sounds like a good man. I'm glad he's there to help you get through all this.
Yes, he really is. Poor guy. I really stayed traumatized after this. And so he's been, he's always making sure I'm okay. Because sometimes, he'll wake up and I'm kind of just looking at the window or, he has to walk me outside when I go to work if it's dark. And, he already knows. He's really good. He'll stay on the phone with me till I get a little bit further away because like we kind of live in a rural area, but we're only 5 minutes away from all amenities. We've had a lot of growth and development within the past 15 years. We're a little bit of the older part that hasn't been developed yet. We're still waiting on it. I still have a well and propane and stuff. So we're like the last area kind of to be developed around here. So it is a little bit of a trail to get out of here. It's a good mile to hit, the main road and lights and people and homes and stuff like that. So he's really good about making sure I'm not scared.
Well, like I said, I'm glad he's there. He does sound like a really good man. Have you read many comments that have been left for shows in the past, Bernadette? And if you have, does it frustrate you to see so many listeners refer to past shows as entertainment?
It does, but at the same time, it's kind of comical because until the day they actually deal with one, all that's going to come rushing back what, they thought. And I pray they don't ever have to have one. But, at the same time, I don't want them to be blind to these things. That's why I try and tell my kids and my grandkids because they do love to go out in the nature and all that. And so I'm always like, just be aware of your surroundings,
Yeah, that's always good advice. And like you said, it's always fun and games until you have a dogman encounter of your own. So, no, I agree. All right, Bernadette, please tell us about your encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, well, my first encounter was in September of 2016, like the latter part of the month. Me and my then boyfriend were moving back to my house because my ex-husband had gotten sick and he had been living here. And so he was no longer able to stay in the home. And so my other son was living here, my daughter-in-law. So I figured I better move back home and take care of the house and get things in order. And so we were moving back and it was really late at night because he had weird hours. And so we were moving in. It was about 3:00 in the morning. And we were, that's the time we were bringing our stuff. And so we had just made like our second load. And keep in mind, I live on the mesa. I live close to a bluff. We have a very beautiful view of the city lights, a 360 view of the mountains around us, and the mesa as our backdrop. And so we were leaving, and my house to the place that I saw the first encounter is it's 2 acres. So it's 2 acres in between my house to the end of the road, this crossroad, where I was going to jump on the road to go. So maybe to 400 feet. So we were leaving. I was driving. He was in the passenger seat. He was tired because he had worked that day. And so we pulled to the end of the road. And it was dark, really dark. And, by force of habit, there's no cars on the road. I still look left and right, to turn right. So I look to my left and I see this dark shadow coming. And I thought, oh, wow, there's 2 people walking. And it was about 100 feet away. And I just looked over and thought, who's walking at this time of the night? Because we live, like I said, in a rural area where we don't see nobody walking on the streets. We don't see that here. And so I turned to him and I told him, who's walking at this time of the night? So then he looks back with me. And at that time, it was only seconds that we looked back over. This thing, or what I thought was 2 people walking down the road, because it was wide. So I'm thinking not 1 person, I'm thinking 2 are coming down the road in the middle of the road. And so when we look back and he looks back with me, it had paced probably 40 feet within that 2 seconds, what it took us to look back that way to the left. And as I looked to the left, it wasn't walking anymore. It was on all fours and it was going up the side embankment. kind of by the stop sign, but a little bit further back. And when I looked, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, it's not a person, it's a dog, or, my mind was just like flipping through files in my head, trying to figure what this thing was. I was thinking, okay, if you could imagine a Brahma bull with no legs, like kind of just flat on the floor, like that huge. The girth of it was wide. I didn't see its face because it never turned its head. It was going sideways and it just kept its head straight that way. I just seen the side of its body, its profile. And it was huge. And I'm thinking, okay, dog, very big, but hyena. It has a hump, a mane thing on the back. It was black hair all over it. It kind of reminded me of the Gable film, Dogman. But it didn't have a chiseled waist. But it did have that canine type, with the big hump on the back. So my mind is just in those few seconds looking back thinking, what is this? You know what I mean? So I'm looking at it. My boyfriend's looking at it. And when he sees it, he's like, go. So, I just took off. So I took off right. This thing was on the left. And I didn't look back because I just knew whatever that was just I'd never seen before. And it was strange. So we took off. I didn't look back. We didn't even come back that night because it was just so weird what we had seen. We went back to our apartment that we had already taken most of the stuff out of. We had our bed there, but we didn't have no blankets, no pillows or anything. And we still slept on that bed because we did not want to come back that night for fear that this thing was out there. Unknown thing that we didn't know what it was. And we believe in, spiritual. We know these things are real, so we're just like, okay, no, not going back tonight. So then, okay, I came back, moved back in, got settled in. My mind kept wondering, what did I see? We don't have hyenas in New Mexico. I don't think so. So I'm Googling hyenas in New Mexico. Dogs with a hump, and just things like, I knew it wasn't a Brahma bull, but if you looked at the girth of it, the way it kind of shaped, that's how I could describe how it looked, that it was all the way on the floor. I never saw its face. I didn't get to see its hands because it was so low to the floor, like it was on all fours. So I couldn't tell you if it had those hands that everybody talks about. I could just tell you the shape of the back and the head. And so I just kept looking up stuff, and I came across a lot of stuff. And then that's when I found your channel. So then I was like, oh, okay, Dogman, wow, so I just started looking through that, and then wow, it just really hit me that that's what I had seen. So I was obsessed for, I don't know, a year. I think I watched your shows. I would listen to them all the time. My kids would tease me. Oh, Mom, you're listening to Dogman again. Yes, I am. Oh, man, Mom, and then my grandkids, they'd come over. I'd put it on. They loved it. My grandkids loved it. They'd be like, they believed me more sometimes than my children did, and they'd be like, oh, my God, Nana, and this and that. And I have a little YouTube channel that I do with my grandkids, and me and my granddaughter one night were doing a video on how to make party tiers and stuff like that we were making for Thanksgiving. So anyway, she's on there and she's talking and she's like, yeah, we have to use this E6000 glue very sparingly because, we don't go out at night because of Dogman, right, Nana? And I'm thinking, oh my God, she said that. And I'm just like, yes. So, they're for believers that he's real. And so anyway, yeah, I looked you up and that's when I found you. And so I was just obsessed with that for a little bit, I gotta admit. And then, so I was worried, after watching all your videos and thinking he comes back, and I was just, so it left me really scared. Not so scared that I didn't go out at night because, we would go out, not too late, but, we'd still try and get back before it got too dark. But so it was 2 years later, September 5th. I was no longer with that guy that I saw the first sighting. It was 2 years later already. And so I had another fiance, well, my new fiance, and he was out of the town at that time. So I was by myself, my son and my daughter-in-law live with me, so they weren't home that night, so I didn't know if they had gotten back or what. I just went to bed. So I went to bed that night and fell asleep. And so it was like actually around 1:50 in the morning when I had my second encounter. And this was on September 5th of 2018. I still have all my text messages that I had sent my son in a panic that night. And so I know exactly what day it was and what time it happened. So it was about 1:50 in the morning, and I was asleep, and I didn't have the TV on. My program that I had put on had already turned off. And so I was asleep, and all of a sudden, I hear this loud noise hit against the side of the house right by my window. I mean, it was so loud that my stuff like rattled. So I jumped out of bed. My first instinct was something's watching me. So I ran to my window, which is on the south side, and I didn't even look at the window because I didn't want to see what was out there. Something told me don't even look. I kind of turned my head and just grabbed the curtains and closed them. I shut the lights that I had on around, the little lamps that I had right here, because I didn't want them to be able to see in. I immediately ran to my door and locked it and grabbed my gun. I carry a .38. So I'm panicked. I'm freaked out. I'm kind of sitting at the corner of my bed, and I'm thinking somebody just broke in the house. So then I start hearing a dog growling, and it's growling like it's angry. So, in all my rational thoughts, and I'm always trying to be logical about things, and not be, panic. I'm a mother, so you got to learn to not panic, and you always want to just, think logically, rationalize right away, So here I'm thinking, okay, my son's dog is barking. My son's dog has heard what I heard. And not barking, growling. So then I'm thinking, okay, somebody broke in. So I'm right away texting my son. Paul, did you hear that? Okay. Nothing comes back. So I'm just like, Paul, wake up. Did you hear that? Somebody hit the house. Somebody broke in. Something's going on. So nothing. And I have this just dread. I don't know why this fear factor was just so pumped up. I was just panicked. I mean, I had a gun in my hand. I could have ran out there with my gun, but all my instincts were telling me, don't leave this room. You won't survive it. Don't leave this room. So I start calling my son. I'm like, okay, he's not hearing my text. Let me call him. So I'm calling and calling and calling. Nothing. So I am like texting him, answer your phone, exclamation, exclamation. I'm like, and then nothing. So I'm like, okay, let me call my daughter-in-law. I'm calling her phone. Nothing. So I'm like, oh my God, did they break in? Is somebody in here? Did they kill my family? I didn't know what to think. In my rational mind, I'm thinking it's a break-in, which in all reality, now that I think back, those patio doors that we have going to the back, it's in an enclosed area. You cannot access that area through the outside. It's a 6-foot fence. The only way you can go out is through inside. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, somebody broke in, something's going on. So I'm calling in a panic, nothing. So, I'm really scared, really, really scared. It was super quiet. The only thing I could hear was the dog growling. My son at that time, had about 6 dogs, 3 Rottweilers. I thought this was one of the older dogs, Chata. I thought it was her. I thought, oh, Chata's growling. She's hearing what I'm hearing. Why don't they wake up? They always hear the dogs, So I was just, didn't know what was going on. I was just practically in tears, in fear in here. And so this little hostage situation, what I call it, that the dogman had me hostage for 2 hours, because it started at 1:57 and it didn't actually end till 4:19 is when I got that text back from my son. But during that time that it was going on, I'm sitting at the edge of my bed, kind of have one leg on the bed, one leg on the floor, my phone in hand, my gun in hand, My head is leaning against the wall that goes to the living room. That living room is in between my son's room on the other side, where the patio doors are to the back, and my room. So I'm leaning with my head up against the wall and I'm just listening. Something's going on, and I could hear something in the living room. It wasn't like super loud. It wasn't like somebody broke in and, they're pulling out your drawers and going through your stuff. I didn't hear that, but I did hear something moving in there. And I could even hear my couch move because I have the couch right up against the wall. So I could hear the couch, and it sounded like somebody was literally like sitting on it. Like when somebody sits down and you can hear it crunch and stuff. And I'm hearing all this, just wondering what's going on, going crazy in my mind, wondering what's going on, trying to keep a sane mind, Keep in mind at this time, I didn't know that was Dogman out there. And I'm glad I didn't know, because if I would have known at that time, I don't know what I would have done. It would have just been too much for me. I, in my mind, just thought somebody broke in, something's going on, but yet this was more of a fear than I could go out there and shoot somebody. This was a fear that this gun isn't going to work on whatever's out there. So I'm dealing with this fear factor. I'm dealing with texting. I'm calling again. I'm texting again. Nothing. I tried calling my fiance that's out of state at the time. He didn't pick up. I go on Facebook. I'm so desperate. I go on Facebook and I think, well, maybe my son's on Facebook. Maybe my calls are going straight to voicemail because he's on Facebook. I jump on there. Nobody's on that I could reach out to, while I was trying to get a hold of him. And nothing. So I'm just in here in a panic while I'm hearing all these noises, my head against the wall, listening to things going on out there. So you got to realize this is a long time of just sitting there and just being mortified. And so while I was there still, I hear the door slam. This was about a good hour in, maybe a little longer. My two patio doors, one of them, I heard a door slam super hard. I mean, it was so hard that it actually made me mad, because I'm thinking, I keep going back to rationale, thinking, why is my son slamming the door? We just put those doors in like a couple of weeks before, very expensive doors. My uncle Isaac came and put them in, and he's a great contractor. And man, they were just so smooth. You couldn't even feel it when you pulled them. That's how smooth they were. And I'm thinking, okay, my son's going out. He's looking at projects he's doing outside in the backyard. But why is he slamming the door? And then most importantly, why is his dog growling at him? Because then the dog growl started up again after that door slam. And it was a very low guttural growl, like a dog that is just like giving you a warning sign, like don't come any closer or something. I mean, it was just so awful. I was just frozen in fear. So here I am again, texting, calling, nothing. I mean, I was just literally hostage in here to whatever was out there. And so finally at that point, I just said, okay, God, I can't take this no more. At that point, I said a short prayer. It wasn't very long. I was just like, Jesus, please protect my son and my daughter-in-law. Please protect us all in this house. When you're that scared, there is no time for long and elaborate prayers, because the fear was so overpowering. That was about all I could get out. So then, at that juncture, after that, that's when things started to cease, and I'm just like so thankful and just, still like, wow, okay, I'm not that scared. I'm still listening. I'm not hearing that much movement in the living room, and the dog stopped growling. So it was coming to my conclusion that this person or whatever was going on in there was gone. Maybe they left, or, wasn't sure. Wasn't sure at this point, but I was totally spent at this point from all the fear and the adrenochrome running through my blood. I was so exhausted. I almost felt like falling asleep, but I didn't want to fall asleep because I was still wanted to be on guard of this person or whatever was still here. So I was, just kind of there like, oh, I'm so tired and I got to be at work in an hour and a half. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess maybe I could just rest here because I can't do nothing else. I just got to wait for the sun to come up and my son isn't responding and maybe they're not even here. I thought they weren't even here because when I went to bed, they weren't here. So I thought, well, maybe they didn't come back or, so at that point, I get a text back and it's my son. And he's all, Mom, are you okay? Where are you? And I'm like, yes, I'm in the room. Where are you? And he's like, I'm in the room. We're asleep. What's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, Paul, I have been calling and texting and I've been so scared in here. He's like, why? What's happening? And I'm like, can you come get me from the room? So he comes out and he knocks on my door and then I unlock it and I go out and we go into the kitchen, put on the light and, he's there like, oh, I'm so sorry. He just felt so bad because I guess he could tell by all my calls and texts that I was just in fear. But he couldn't understand what was going on. So I'm just like, well, I don't know. You didn't hear that noise, that loud bang against the house? And he's like, no, I didn't hear nothing. And I'm like, yeah, it was so loud. I told him Chata was growling. And he's like, are you sure it was Chata? He goes, because when one of our dog barks or growls, all of them start growling and barking. And I'm like, yeah, it was her. I was just like, it was a dog growling. I know what I heard, And he's like, okay. And I'm like, but you didn't hear the door slam? Like, oh, I thought it was you. I thought maybe you or Janaea went outside. And he's like, no, Mom. He goes, let me go ask her. So he went in there and asked her if she'd been out. She's like, no, I haven't been out. I went out earlier. She said probably like 10 or 11. It was real early or a lot earlier, because they bring their dogs in. That's where they have the dogs. And they bring them in at night. None of the dogs are outside. So I'm just like, I don't know, Paul. Something slammed his door really hard. And that door is brand new. We don't even need to slam that door. It's so smooth. And he's like, I don't know, Mom. I don't know what's going on. We didn't hear nothing. We couldn't hear our phones. It's like something put us in a deep sleep and the dogs because we couldn't hear anything. He's like, I'm so sorry you went through that. He just felt so bad. And I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know. And he goes, have you ever thought maybe it was a demon? And I'm like, I didn't think that. And I'm glad I didn't at the time because I would have really, really just might have lost my mind in here. And I'm just like, no, but I mean, I guess because he's like, he went outside. He checked the back. He didn't see nothing. Like, we're at forced entry. He checked his stuff. He goes, I have my money here. I have my phone. I have everything's right here on the counter and nothing's been touched. So nobody came in to steal. He goes, you don't think it was a demon? And I'm like, I guess. I mean, I believe in them. I know they're real. I know they exist. I mean, if I'm a Christian, I know there is a spiritual realm, angels and demons and stuff like that. I believe in that. But I didn't think I would be experiencing something like that. So keep in mind again, at that time, I didn't think this was Dogman. So my fiance gets back a couple of days later. He comes back a little bit early because I had told him what happened and he was worried, and I was, really, really shaken up by this. Well, I'm sorry. Let me back up. So after my son had told me that, and I said, well, I guess, so he stayed talking with me. Are you okay? I'm going to stay up with you. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go try and rest because I do have to be at work in an hour. So I came back to my room. And during that time, out of the blue, we just get this really intense thunderstorm that breaks out. I mean, it's like none I've ever heard. And I'm just like, wow, sounds like a war is going on up there. So my phone starts ringing at 5 a.m. and it's my niece. She's, part of our prayer group and we have Bible study together every week and stuff like that. But she's calling me. So I'm thinking something happened, So I pick up and she's like, Auntie Berna, what's going on? Is the world ending? We're all up over here praying. I mean, it's so scary what's happening. I've never heard thunder and lightning like this before. And I'm like, I know, I don't know, Roxanne, but all I know is I just had my own personal encounter with a demonic experience or something happened earlier, but I'll tell you later because, I got to get ready for work. And, so I just kind of calmed her fears that everything was going to be okay. And everything did kind of cease, but it was intense. I mean, so intense. She's never called me before for a thunderstorm or anything like that. And she was calling me at 5 a.m. that day. So I was in my mind thinking, wow, it sounded like I had some angels up there that were fighting off a demon, and it sounded like a war in heaven. It really did that day. So anyway, I had to get ready for work, got ready for work, was exhausted, went to work and proceeded with my day and life as usual. But after that point, I did stay very scared. My fiance had gotten back and, I told him about the experience and he felt really bad that I had to go through that by myself. So, he's very spiritual and believes in Christ and God. And he just says, you know what? Something's being placed in my heart that what you experienced that night was Dogman. That Dogman came in, and when you heard that door slam, that was the angels throwing him out because you have an angel that protects you. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just felt like I got punched in the stomach thinking, could I have really encountered that, And I was like, okay, so I just kind of, thought about it and wasn't sure. And I was just like, well, I do know I have angels protecting me and stuff, but, it hadn't totally sank in that it could have been Dogman. Till I was watching one of your episodes one night, and it was episode 272, where your guest Mike was talking about where he had a Dogman experience, and he was several. And this was his third one, or second one, I think, where he was smoking out the window and had put a fan in the window and, just blowing the smoke out. And he looked up and seen Dogman sniffing around his car. And when the Dogman had seen him and made eye contact with him, it started charging towards the window. So he, like me, closed his curtains, shut the lights, was sitting on his bed or floor with his gun and his knife. I didn't have a knife, but I did have my gun. And he had barricaded his door, thinking the Dogman was going to come through. And I felt the same way. I felt like at any moment, something's going to break through that door. And I wasn't thinking Dogman. I'm thinking robbers. I'm thinking it's only a matter of time before they walk through the house. They come around the kitchen and through the washroom and they come to my room. That's the kind of fear I had. And like him, he sat there but the only thing is he knew he was dealing with a Dogman. He saw it. So what he described is exactly what I went through. I went through the growling at the door, the fear, how I came in, and then the door slammed as it left. So that's when it really hit me that, okay, I want to be in denial, and I truly believe that's what happened. I mean, it makes all logical sense because I would like to be logical. I always come back to logic, and that makes like perfect sense what happened. And so it was after that, and I keep talking about it. And then so my fiance's like, well, why don't you just call Vic and tell him your story? Because, I think other people need to know too, So I was like, okay, so then that's when I decided. I got online and I submitted my story, and that's when I got contacted from you. So that's my story.
Yeah, that's quite a story, actually. You said that the Dogman you saw had a hyena-like look to it because of its sloping back. I realize it wasn't lit up very well, so the answer to this question is probably going to be no, but could you see any spots on it?
No, it looked really black, really dark fur.
I see. When you started researching Dogman, did you ever look to see if any encounters had been reported in your area?
No, I didn't. But as I later listened, years out, a year or so out, I started hearing people talking about it on some shows, But yeah, no, I didn't research that.
I see. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if you did have your fair share of encounters in that area. They do happen all over. You said your grandkids like listening to the show, but they seem to respect the fact that Dogmen are real. Has that caused them any problems that you know of, like nightmares, for example?
None that I know of.
Oh, good.
Usually, when they have dreams or anything like that, they always tell me because they know I'm real open-minded and I'm, going to try and give them the best logical and advice I could give them. And they always tell me about any kind of little encounters or paranormal things they think they've encountered. And no, they haven't talked about any of that. As a matter of fact, I haven't even had dreams about Dogman, which surprises me. It really surprises me that I haven't. And I thank God I haven't.
Yeah, I'm glad you haven't as well. When you had that first encounter, did you ever smell anything unusual or hear it make any sounds?
I didn't. And that's one thing I noticed with both. I did not smell anything.
Well, that's not that unusual. I mean, a lot of eyewitnesses don't report smelling anything or hearing anything from the Dogmen, so yeah, there's nothing strange about that. How far was the place where you had your second encounter from where you had your first one?
It was approximately 2 acres because my neighbor lives an acre apart from me and the other neighbor lives an acre. So it's 2 acres from where I live to the end of the road where I saw that first encounter. So maybe 400 feet.
About 400 feet, I see. How sure are you or aren't you that it was the same Dogman that you had your first encounter with?
I'm not sure. I mean, because I didn't see it, I just know what I heard. So that I'm not sure, but the way things usually are is it's usually the same one that comes back.
Yeah, it seems to be that way. If it was the same Dogman, is that one of the reasons why you think Dogmen are demonic?
Yes. Yes. I mean, if it would have just been like the one I seen that day and, it didn't bother me that day. It just was on its way whatever it was doing. But the second one that came here was totally demonic. I mean, it had me frozen in fear. I had a gun in my hand. I knew it wasn't going to help me. And it kept me in fear here for 2 hours. I mean, it just totally tormented me.
Yeah, sounds like it did. Did a pretty good job of doing that, and understandably so. After it dropped down onto all fours, did it seem to move in an unusual way or a pretty normal way?
Well, I didn't actually see the transition of when it went from standing to all fours because that's when I looked and was telling him who would be walking at this time. So by the time we turned back and looked again, it was already on all fours and going up the side embankment. And it wasn't even moving. It was just kind of just there, like just going up. I just caught it like really quick. So I didn't see that transition.
Oh, that's okay. When you did see it going up the embankment, though, it was pretty smooth in its movements?
Yes. Yes. And it was real low to the ground. So I didn't get to see its feet moving. I just knew it was moving, but I didn't see its feet moving because it looked like it was like really hovering on the ground, like real low, like in a crouched position almost.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy. I can only imagine what that must have been like to see. When Paul didn't answer his phone when you had that second encounter, were you more upset and angry at him or frustrated by him not answering?
I think all of those. I think I was angry and then upset and then frustrated, but I realize now that that helped me to keep me from going so deep into the fear. So it kind of switched my energy over to, okay, being a little bit mad, like, why don't you answer? And you know how mom is thinking, and so it kind of kept me from just falling too much into the fear.
You did a really good job of holding it together. I can only imagine what that must have been like to try and experience and handle in an appropriate way. So, yeah, you deserve a lot of credit for that.
Oh, it was a test of time, no doubt. I mean, 2 hours of just dealing with something out there. It was rough. I was so exhausted after that.
Oh, I bet you were, and for good reason, too. You said you're glad you didn't open your bedroom door to see if it really was inside the house, but is there kind of a part of you that wishes you did, just out of curiosity?
No. No, because I'm not that strong to go ahead and to see that, I mean, it was enough having to hear it, but to actually put a face to the fear and terror that I was going through, Like I said, that would have just been too much for me. And I think God knows what we can handle. And that's why he told me, don't look out the window, close your curtains, and do not go out there because there's some things that we can't fight. A lot of people want to go out there and think, oh, I'm going to go hunt a dog man. You know what? It takes a very strong, spiritually sound mind and probably weaponry to take something like this down. And God said, that's something for me to take care of, not you. And no, I'm glad I did not see it. Do not want to see it. I mean, at this point, I still at night, when I go by windows, if it's dark already, I try not to look out. In the day, I look outside. I'll look out the windows. But at night, I just don't want to see that. I mean, it's just too scary. And maybe I'm not ready for that yet, so no. I'm glad I did not go out there and look.
Full disclosure, I'm glad you didn't look too. Did Paul's Rottweilers have any lingering issues after what happened to you that night, or was it pretty much business as usual for them after that?
I hadn't noticed anything. I didn't notice anything, no.
Well, as you know, it takes a lot to upset Rotts, so I guess that fits. I'd hate to see what would upset them, though.
Yeah, and I think what I thought I was hearing as his Rottweiler wasn't the Rottweiler. It was the dogman that was growling. Because he is right. When one of his dogs starts barking or growling, they all do. They all get riled up. And it was just one dog, one very angry dog that I heard that night. And he's like, Mom, we hear our dogs. We're always, we're very attentive to when our dogs bark or growl. And it would have been all of them, not just one. And it makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Even though you didn't have a sighting when you had your second encounter, it sounds to me like that encounter might have been more traumatic for you than the first one. Is that true?
Oh, definitely. It was more traumatic. Yeah, the first one left me kind of boggled. Like, what was that? But it didn't do anything. It didn't even look at me. It just was like crouched there. And so, that one, it was, like I said, mind-boggling, makes you realize there's other things out there than just us. But the second one, it really came to taunt me. It really came to taunt me. So that was what's so disturbing and it wasn't like out on the road where these people are driving somewhere and they see it. This was at my home and in my house. So it is very traumatic. I sleep with my door locked. I'm like thinking this thing could come in while I'm sleeping or, and, I'm a Christian. I need to have more faith that it's not, but it's still to know that it was hitting your wall, wanted to wake you up, was growling at you from outside. Something was in the house because my door didn't slam by itself and nobody can just get into the back. That's a 6-foot fence. Something had to leap that fence to get in there, to come through those back doors. So yeah, that was very traumatic. It has impeded my ability to go out at night by myself. If I left something in the car, it's staying there. Unless somebody takes me to the car when it's, at night when it's dark or watches me when I go. But I will not just go out like I used to. I used to love being in the yard. I mean, we have a great view and a lot of land. And now I walk out. First thing I do, I look to my left, I look to my right. We have a shed. I look there, make sure nothing's hiding there, crouching behind the step. Then I go to my car. That's my new routine.
Well, that second experience was a lot to deal with. I think you've handled it with grace. It's not easy to go through an experience like that.
No. And my son teases me. He's like, oh, mom. And I'm like, okay. You don't even know and you don't want to know. But man, it was not easy.
Oh, no, it wasn't easy. And yeah, he's got no idea what he's talking about. You admitted that you tried to remain in denial about your encounters. A lot of eyewitnesses do that, actually. Do you think that helped you or hurt you in the long run?
I think it's a protective mechanism to kind of help you heal and kind of get a little bit further in your growth, So I don't think it hurt or helped. I think it's like it should have been, I think it was just, what you need to allow in, like there's only so much we can chew at a time. So I wasn't ready to chew that yet, but then it came very real. And then it was substantiated by other Dogman encounters that I've heard, like, episode 272, and then even more after that of how people have had them outside their window and in their house. So I got to realize that, I am one of those people. And, once I realize and accept that, I think that's going to help me grow, because maybe it's meant for certain people's growth. And, it has tested me in a lot of ways of not being scared, in certain ways. Like for that, yes. But in other ways, it has made me stronger.
You couldn't be more right. Just like a Toledo steel blade, you bend, but you don't break. And I'm so glad you did decide to open up about this. I can totally understand why that second experience was more terrifying than the first one, by far. After all, sometimes the dogman you don't see is actually worse than the one that you do. But having said that, Bernadette, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes. First of all, be aware of your surroundings. Know that this world we live in is a strange one. The spiritual realm is just as real as the physical, and sometimes they merge and overlap. Angels and demons are real. Science is real. And most importantly, God is real and a protector of his children. So always call on him.
Wow, that's really well said. Well, Bernadette, I want to thank you so much for coming on and telling us about those experiences. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic. I appreciate your enlightenment and empathy for us survivors.
Oh, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for. Well, thanks again so much. Have a great night. If you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.